So, if you caught the most recent Nintendo Direct on Twitch, like I did, you'll probably know Metroid Prime Federation Force hasn't been all that warmly received. Well, there's a reason for that, and we're going to go over why. There's 6 general reasons why Federation Force is really not favored by fans of the Metroid franchise. Issue number 1, fans feel like Nintendo isn't paying attention to us, at least not us over in the West, or I guess east of Japan. Depends on how you classify it. Both this and Sticker Star are examples of Nintendo paying more attention to numbers than to actual opinions of the games. Most people didn't much care for Sticker Star's mechanics, and people were pretty peeved about Other M. And yet, we've got Color Splash and Federation Force. Yeah. Fans have even gone out of their way to say, yo hey, Nintendo, we're not okay with this. Give us a normal Metroid game. Go back to the basics. And Nintendo has outright ignored that. In fact, a lot of people took their statement of, here's why Federation Force falls into the Metroid canon, as you're not allowed to hate this game, and here's why. That's kind of a problem. You really don't want that. If Bungie's destiny is any indication, developers don't want players to feel like they're the bad guy. At all. It doesn't go well. Issue number 2 is the schedule. Something to keep in mind here, the last Metroid game before Federation Force was Other M. That didn't go over so well, and Other M came out back in August 31st of 2010. That's almost 6 years ago. And then we get a spin-off Metroid game. People are pretty peeved about that, and if you want to go even further back, depending on how you classify it, the last good Metroid game was either the Prime Trilogy in 2009, Prime 3 in 2007, and if you hated the Prime games, the last good Metroid game was Zero Mission in 2004. That's, at this point, over 12 years ago, because it came out in February 9th. So starting off with a spin-off game, maybe not a good idea, especially after Other M, which was pretty critically and generally received bad. Just most people admit, not a very good game. Some people enjoyed the gameplay, but it's pretty undisputed. Other M wasn't very good. But that's a rant for a different video. Trust me, I could rant on Other M for quite a while. Issue number 3 is stickers, and I'm not talking about the Sticker Star kind of stickers. What I mean by that is when a game that really doesn't fit into a franchise is just given that franchise's sticker. Federation Force is a prime example of this. This game doesn't really have anything to do with Metroid. The closest relation it has is Prime, which even Sakamoto, the head of Metroid, has said is non-canon, which is essentially treating it as a spin-off series. So you're making a spin-off of a spin-off. Maybe not a good idea. Just throwing that out there. Similarly, Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts wasn't received all that well either, because it's not a Banjo-Kazooie game. It's not adventurous. It's more of Lego Cars, as Jontron has called it, but with a Banjo-Kazooie sticker. It has nothing to do with its original franchise other than some characters shoved in there. There's no real adventure to the game. It's mostly, in fact, it's almost closer to an RPG in the quest system. Metroid Federation Force is a lot like that. Then, you have Spinball vs. Federation Force. Why is Spinball okay? That's another spin-off game. Well, first of all, the timing. Metroid Prime Spinball was during the Prime games. There were a bunch of games coming out. So there wasn't really a problem. Most of the people who liked the Metroid games were okay with the spin-off because if they didn't want to play the spin-off, they could play other actual Metroid games. The problem with Federation Force is, like I said, the schedule. We haven't had a Metroid game in almost 6 years, and a good one in, lot of time. So you're putting in a spin-off as the first game over a large gap from the franchise. Very bad idea. Next up, a big issue was what they started with. One of the first things they showed for Federation Force was Blast Ball. Not a good idea. Most people, for the beginning of Federation Force's introduction, believed it was just Metroid Soccer and nothing more. Granted, now, the opinions of Federation Force have mostly become lukewarm. There's not as much hate for it, because it's more like Prime Hunters on the DS. But Blast Ball was not a good thing to start with. Really wasn't. Having this game mode that has nothing to do with the original franchise as your starting introduction to a spin-off game for a franchise that is so critically received and people have been clamoring for a new game in, maybe not a good call. Whoever's idea that was should probably be fired. And then a sub-issue is that the game is kind of kiddie, which that's more subjective. Some people have an issue with Federation Force in that the game looks very childish. A lot of the characters are very chibi, but to be fair, that's just a large part of Japanese culture, and you have to keep in mind, Nintendo is based in Japan. They're not based in the States like some companies. Nintendo mostly, I don't want to say panders, but they kind of pander to their Japanese audience, more so than the Western audience, or Eastern, like I said earlier. So, most of the Nintendo games are more oriented toward Japanese audiences, which is why things are a little more kid-friendly and they're more adorable, because that's more universal over there. Over here we have, a good example is the trope, American Kirby is hardcore. In the cover of all the Kirby games in the States, Kirby's given angry eyebrows, but in all of the Japanese covers, he looks happy. Why? Because Nintendo of America thought Kirby wouldn't be as appealing if he didn't look badass on the cover. So they gave him angry eyebrows. So that's kind of a prime example of that. And that's really just a matter of the culture. Over here in the States, we tend to favor badassery, which is why games like Gears and Call of Duty tend to become a little bit bigger over here than they do in Japan. On the other hand, Nintendo games are a bit more popular in Japan. So, there's good reasons for that. Personally, I don't have that much of an issue with it being kiddie. I more so have an issue with them going, hey guys, it's been 6 years since we had a Metroid game. How about a spin-off? Just not a good call. Now, do I think Federation Force deserves the hate it gets? No. No, I don't. Federation Force is not fundamentally a bad game. I don't think it's even fundamentally a bad Metroid game. It's a spin-off. They made that clear very quickly. It's a PR thing. People are upset because we haven't had a Metroid game since Other M, and Other M was pretty bad. And Nintendo really hasn't had anything to say about that. And Sakamoto's little comment of, I wrote the story myself, so obviously that's not the issue, certainly didn't help that. But, yeah, Nintendo comes across as kind of not giving a shit to a lot of fans. And that's kind of the problem here. Nintendo, people have been feeling, at least, I can't speak for everyone, but I know more than a few people have been feeling Nintendo has kind of just been shitting all over their fan base recently, especially in the West. Especially in the West. All this business with YouTube is a prime example of that. All this copyright nonsense is absolutely bonkers. And this kind of stuff. You got Sticker Star, you got Federation Force. There are obviously it's subjective. There are games that some people thought weren't that great. I personally didn't like Skyward Sword. Do I think Skyward Sword's a bad game? No. I just think the motion controls are terrible. And that's completely all over the place. Some people had no problems with the controls. Some people did, myself included. I actually have a friend who played Skyward Sword and loved it because he had no issues with the motion controls. I relentlessly fought with those motion controls, and I hated them. It made me hate the game as a result. I played it once, never picked it up again. In fact, I sold it a couple weeks after. So, it's... a lot of this is subjective. But, like I said, do I think Federation Force is deserving of the hate it's getting? No, it's not. Blast Ball is kind of a fun mode. It's basically Prime 2's multiplayer. But... soccer, I guess. I don't know. People are giving Federation Force a lot of shit. Proton John has said himself he's actually kind of interested in Federation Force. And to be fair, so am I. Do I think I'm going to buy it? Probably not. At least not immediately. Because I'm more interested in a PS4 than a new Nintendo 3DS XL. I think that's the one in the States. Yeah, that sounds right. I'm more interested in getting a PS4 than a new Nintendo 3DS, but, which, the name of that is, like Other M, that is a rant for a different video. Anyway, I'm probably not going to get Federation Force immediately. And personally, I don't like the Prime games as much as I like Super Metroid. I do enjoy the Prime games, but I don't like them as much as Super Metroid, so... Federation Force probably isn't my cup of tea, but it's certainly not deserving of the petition to get it canceled, or the boycott, or any of that. And keep in mind, those are actual things people tried. There was a petition at one point, in fact it might even still be going, to get Nintendo to shut down Federation Force. That's how pissed some people were over this game. Which should tell Nintendo something. And this is also a case of Nintendo probably not showing their cards when they should. Nintendo kind of has an issue with that. They don't know when to reveal their hand and when to keep it secret to hype. There've been a couple of cases of Nintendo... Like, Majora's Mask 3D was a prime example of that. People got really disheartened about Majora's Mask 3D because Nintendo kept going all NDA about it. People were like, is there going to be a Majora's Mask 3D? And they wouldn't say shit. And it went on for so long that people were like, guess they're not going to make it. Well, whatever. And they didn't get quite the reception of Majora's Mask 3D that they anticipated because of that. Because they actually... kept it hush-hush for so long. There's a point when hype starts to drop. There's a point when you can hype it up to a certain degree, and then people are like, and the hype wavers. And if you go for too long, it reaches that point. Federation Force may be on the starting end of that. Nintendo might have a big Metroid game planned, and they're just not revealing it yet, and Federation Force is coming out shortly before it. There may be a new Metroid game for next year or year after, and they're just not telling everybody because they want it to be a surprise. But the problem is, since they're not telling everyone, a lot of people are getting the impression that Nintendo just doesn't give a shit about Metroid, and that's kind of the problem here. Nintendo's PR team is shit. They're bad at their job, and they should feel bad. Yeah, that's kind of the issue here. And that's kind of what I'm leaning toward. I highly doubt Nintendo's just left Metroid to rot to become a spin-off series. I imagine they have a big game like the Prime games or, another game in the Metroid series planned, and they just don't want to tell anybody yet and keep it hyped. So when it comes out, people are like, yeah, new Metroid game, woo! And going crazy. And Federation Force is just getting the lash because people are like, where's the new Metroid game? So, I don't know. What do you guys think? Post your opinions in the comments. Do you think Federation Force is deserving of the hate it's getting? Do you think it isn't? Do you think I'm right? Maybe Nintendo's got another Metroid game planned and they're just not saying anything? Do you think they really don't give a shit about Metroid anymore? It's entirely possible. I want to know what you guys think. So that's going to be it. Next time, whoo boy, we're going to talk about Other M. That's going to be fun.